We are going to hold people accountable that push lies. And the president believes deeply that American news outlets should be reporting the truth.
Women were not invited to many tables in this nation. The reason we fought and busted our behinds to make sure that you didn't have to worry about this.
They're disgusting. She's Anna Navarro. In your wildest imagination, you could never solo host a show. You will only ever make it as part of an ensemble, and you could never hope to achieve the success. So you can sit in your little cheap seats all day long and enjoy your little negative henpecking, but your careers are going nowhere.
How ironic that Whoopi Goldberg and Joy Behar and the rest of the ladies on The View spend their time calling Republicans the conspiracy theorists, but they have been wrong about everything they have said over the last couple of years.
No one saw this coming. The noise was expected, the arguments were expected, and the usual daytime TV drama was practically guaranteed. But the way everything unfolded was something else entirely. According to the original narrative, Megyn Kelly didn't arrive as a passive observer. She came prepared, confident, and seemingly ready to challenge the entire situation head-on. Karoline Leavitt, meanwhile, was portrayed as someone who had just walked away from a major courtroom victory and was now stepping back onto the national stage with a completely different level of influence. Megyn's commentary kept landing one punch after another. Joy appeared unable to regain control of the moment, while Whoopi seemed seconds away from losing her patience. And through all of it, Megyn remained almost effortlessly amused. So how did a situation surrounding one of daytime television's biggest names turn into such a spectacular collapse? The story has courtroom drama, media pressure, sharp commentary, and a conclusion that, at least according to this narrative, nobody was for.
ABC, having just paid $15 million for a defamation lawsuit, would think not to engage in conspiracy theories about assassination attempts, but I guess that's too much to ask from The View. I mean, I gotta ask you, because they said it, are you aware of any plots from Elon Musk to push President Trump down the stairs?
Absolutely not. Let me be unequivocally.
For years, the women sitting behind that famous table were portrayed as completely confident in their position. They controlled the conversation, challenged their critics, and operated as though very little could seriously threaten the machine they had built. Then came the massive financial consequence described in this story, $800 million. Karoline Leavitt wasn't portrayed as someone who simply accepted defeat or disappeared after a confrontation. Instead, the narrative presents her as turning the entire situation around and forcing the people who once controlled the story to deal with a completely different ending. And then Megyn Kelly stepped into the aftermath. She didn't quietly analyze what had happened from the sidelines. She entered the conversation with confidence, revisited the controversy, and appeared almost eager to examine every crack left behind.
Young lady this is her first job, I would like her to do a little homework. Because she said something yesterday that really pissed me off. And that was, she said, there will be no wokeness here.
Oh, yeah.
Let me explain something to you. Because without that wokeness, you might not have that job.
Yeah.
Because women were not invited to that table. Women were not invited to many tables in this nation. The reason we fought and busted our behinds to make sure that you didn't have to worry about this. And now to hear you talk about it and to hear anybody talk about the wokeness was put in place for a reason.
Before we go any further, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe, because this is one story you won't want to miss. Imagine waking up one morning believing you're completely secure behind one of television's most recognizable tables. Millions of viewers are watching, opinions are flying, the conversation seems entirely under your control. Then suddenly everything changes. A major legal dispute enters the picture, enormous financial consequences are being discussed, and the people involved find themselves facing questions that cannot simply be dismissed with another television segment. The View built much of its identity around outspoken commentary. The hosts could be sharp, direct, and fearless when confronting people they disagreed with. But there's an important difference between saying something provocative on television and proving that statement when legal questions enter the room. That's where this story takes its most dramatic turn. To block out the sun.
Melania Trump came out and said she's about as pro-choice as they come. And here was the reaction on The View.
I think she hates him.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Okay, so we can all agree on that. That's a given. I also think that she wants to take him out. She does not want to be the first lady anymore.
Would you Look, this is a network that still runs out fact checks to these women, like it's concerned about them.
Let's put the number into perspective, because calling it a minor consequence would completely miss the point. The figure presented in this story is $800 million. That's not the kind of amount a network simply adds to an ordinary budget and forgets about. It's the kind of number capable of triggering serious conversations in executive offices and forcing an organization to reconsider how it operates. The story portrays the financial hit as something much larger than a routine penalty. It represents a crisis capable of affecting department, programming decisions, leadership, and the entire direction of a television operation. And when a number becomes that enormous, the consequences don't stay inside one courtroom. They spread throughout the organization.
She promotes Joe Biden and Kamala Harris every day on that show. Trump wasn't supportive enough of the cops who were, yes, in danger on J 6th. How does that explain their behavior on a daily basis toward Harris, toward Biden, toward AOC, toward all of the left, including their own show, Sunny Hostin? The hypocrisy is rank.
We did not have is white women who voted about 52%, right, for Donald Trump. Uneducated white women, is my understanding. You have Latino men, actually, voting more for him. And you have, and black men was not the story. We're not the story here, because they voted almost 80% for the vice president.
What happened in the courtroom, according to this narrative, was far bigger than an ordinary legal disagreement. It became a confrontation over credibility, accountability, and the price of turning controversy into entertainment. Karoline wasn't portrayed as someone who simply arrived hoping for a favorable outcome. She was presented as having built a detailed legal strategy and walking away with the upper hand. Megyn Kelly then entered the aftermath and transformed the situation into a larger lesson about modern media. The formula seemed simple for years: make a bold statement, create outrage, generate attention, and move on to the next story. But eventually, that approach can collide with something much less forgiving than television ratings: legal accountability. The narrative claims Karoline took a different route. Instead of reacting emotionally or fighting through social media, she allegedly focused on documentation, evidence, and the legal process. Every disputed statement mattered. Every piece of evidence mattered. Every alleged violation became part of a much larger argument. This wasn't presented as an emotional reaction. It was presented as a carefully constructed case.
Happy about it, and many people would like us to be more focused on the insurrection that he personally unleashed. If you ask them, as we discussed earlier, they think it's as bad as like the Holocaust, and you don't have to take my word for it. Here is Sunny Hostin of
January
The View
6th was
today.
an atrocity. It was one of the worst moments in American history. And when you think about the worst moments in American history, like World War II, things that happened, like the...
When everything finally settled, the number presented as the final consequence was $800 million. A figure like that doesn't simply create financial pain. It can force an organization to rethink its priorities from the ground up. Departments can come under review, executives can face difficult questions, and entire editorial strategies can suddenly look very different. Meanwhile, Karoline was portrayed as remaining calm throughout the process. No dramatic outburst, no desperate reaction, just a deliberate approach that ultimately placed her in a much stronger position. Then Megyn Kelly returned to the story. Her commentary wasn't presented as emotional or chaotic. Instead, she approached the situation almost like an investigation, breaking down what happened piece by piece and pointing toward the warning signs that had allegedly been visible long before the final outcome. The message was simple: some disasters don't arrive without warning. Sometimes the signs are there for years before everyone finally notices them.
From, forgive me, those is over at The View.
I'm a Christian girl. When something like this happens to you, like this assassination attempt, and you say something like God was watching me, that is a very unchristian thing to say, because it's very narcissistic. What? Well, God was watching me and not watching them. There's something very disturbing.
God should have pulled the plug on that mic yesterday.
That's obnoxious. I don't know what church she goes to. That is how people of faith talk, and the intimation is never, he was looking out for me, but not those monsters.
When everything finally settled, the number presented as the final consequence was $800 million. A figure like that doesn't simply create financial pain. It can force an organization to rethink its priorities from the ground up. Departments can come under review, executives can face difficult questions, and entire editorial strategies can suddenly look very different. Meanwhile, Karoline was portrayed as remaining calm throughout the process. No dramatic outburst, no desperate reaction, just a deliberate approach that ultimately placed her in a much stronger position. Then Megyn Kelly returned to the story, her commentary wasn't presented as emotional or chaotic. Instead, she approached the situation almost like an investigation, breaking down what happened piece by piece and pointing toward the warning signs that had allegedly been visible long before the final outcome. The message was simple: some disasters don't arrive without warning. Sometimes the signs are there for years before everyone finally notices them.
Goldberg was angry when Alyssa pointed out that Trump went to the funeral of Officer Diller.
Yes.
On Long Island, and Joe Biden went to a podcast. Look at Whoopi Goldberg's reaction.
Choose what you like there, but for Republicans, it was good imagery.
Really?
One day later, yes.
And I'm asking that because I was so offended because you know who showed up.
Karoline's legal team, according to the narrative, didn't walk into the case hoping everything would somehow work out. They arrived prepared. The story describes an extensive focus on defamation law, previous legal precedents, and a large collection of supporting documentation. Then came the discovery process. Tenel communications were examined. Production materials were reviewed. Planning documents were scrutinized. The narrative claims that these materials helped reveal how certain decisions were allegedly influenced by ratings and television impact rather than accuracy. Once that evidence entered the courtroom, the entire dispute supposedly took on a different character. The story describes allegations involving reputational damage, professional consequences, and an alleged disregard for accuracy being documented and organized into a broader case. The biggest mistake, according to this version of events, was assuming Karoline was simply another person who could be placed into a television narrative and then forgotten. She wasn't. Instead, the story portrays her as someone quietly building a case while everyone else was still treating the situation like another media cycle.
Hot mess that they air in the mornings, called The View, had to issue not one, not two, not three, but 4 corrections, legal corrections. 4 legal notes. We only have 3 of them on camera, but look at this.
I have another legal note.
My God.
Both Trump and Pam Bondi have denied allegations of a quid pro quo. I have a legal note.
Not to mention what they did at that debate, where once again, they tried to fact check only one side, and then when their fact checks got fact checked, they cowered. They cowered in fear. I mean, this is a pattern.
Years of cultural influence can create a dangerous kind of confidence, the belief that consequences are always going to happen to someone else. That confidence is exactly what Karoline is portrayed as challenging. She allegedly turned dismissive treatment into documentation, overconfidence into evidence, and a massive legal dispute into a moment that could influence how the wider media industry operates. Megyn Kelly watched the situation unfold and, according to the narrative, responded with something more calculated than simple celebration. She broke down the decisions that allegedly led to the outcome and allowed the reported facts to carry much of the argument. The consequences didn't stop with the verdict. The story describes longer production meetings, increased legal reviews, and television personalities becoming far more cautious about statements that once might have been delivered without much thought. Suddenly, words like allegedly carried a very different weight.
Of nothing more than tearing down women with the most petty and vacuous of insults. Leavitt appears to be a fierce operator, but she's also 27 and arguably quite glamorous. So of course, the kind and progressive voices at The View reacted to her appointment like this.
I think she's probably been put in there because according to Donald Trump, she's a 10. You know that's what